As a family loses their mother, Bronna, to the waves that crash along the coastline of their small lighthouse island home, at a time when she goes into labour, giving birth to a daughter, the painful sorrow of loss lingers over the family. Connor, the father, often bogged down by mourning the disappearance of his wife. Ben, the son, frustrated with his little sister, defensive towards the connection that he had with his mother, and Saoirse, the young daughter who shares the similar gifts of her mother that she never met. During her 6th birthday, when Saoirse finds her mother's coat hidden away in a closet, the discovery is made that their mother, Bronna, was a Selkie, a figure of Celtic folklore that could transform between human and seal. Washing up ashore, found by her overprotective grandmother, the grandmother decides to take Ben and Saoirse away to the mainland in an attempt to relieve her son of additional pressures, while also providing a home safer away from the sea. However, this departure motivates Ben and Saoirse to take an adventure back home, finding passage through a blurring between reality and folkloric fantasy, between mourning and acceptance of one's own difficult emotions. This is Tomm Moore's Song of the Sea, an Oscar-nominated animated feature from the Irish animation studio cartoon Saloon. With its mixture of traditional Irish folklore, tales of MacLear, Selkies, fairies known as the Dina Shi turned to stone, and Shanachie being a term used to describe a storyteller or a historian within Gaelic culture, the great Shanachie within Song of the Sea being a playful subversion of this, due to the character's inability to retain a train of thought longer than a moment. And with its modernised contextualising of these folkloric elements, Song of the Sea crafts a tale that feels distinctly Irish and yet wholeheartedly universal, tackling the thorny subjects of mourning, loss, and the difficulty in coping with challenging emotions, encouraging its viewers not to bottle up their feelings, but to engage and release them. Writing for The Guardian, Leslie Felperin discusses Song of the Sea's ability to mix the folkloric with the grounded, the fantasy with the real, stating that folky music and Studio Ghibli level flights of eerie fancy are obvious pleasures, but even more subtle and entrancing is the way Moore and his team use echoed shapes to suggest hidden patterns in nature and parallels between the real and the mythical, while the folk presentation and the gorgeously detailed vistas of Irish natural beauty are enough to enchant the hearts of viewers. The most significant of the film's magic is how it converges the folkloric, specifically the nostalgic stories that Ben's mother would tell him before bedtime, with the reality of coping with loss and the feelings that arise, in a manner not dissimilar to The Wizard of Oz, with how Dorothy's adventures and encounters through the Wonderland of Oz reflected the people she knew closest to her within her reality. Song of the Sea has its characters grounded within reality, reflecting the characters based within fantasy. This is especially apparent between the grandmother and Macha the Witch, the ferryman and the great Shanachie, and the father Connor, and the story of MacLear. Ben and Saoirse's overprotective granny, with her good intentions, but her oppressive manner of executing them. For example, when Ben cries in the car ride to his granny's house, she curtly prompts him that there will be no crying in the car or her house. A silencing of the sorrow is reflective of the fantastical Macha, an owl witch who shares the same appearance as the grandmother, using her owls to bottle up the feelings that cause pain and suffering to those she cares for, a repression of all difficult emotion. The character of the ferryman, a cheery secondary character who offers safe passage towards the mainland, shares a similarity in appearance to the great Shanachie, who also serves a similar purpose of providing safe passage, giving a strand of his hair to Ben which will guide him out of the caves. And Connor, the grieving father, shares the appearance of MacLear, the giant king, and Macha's own son, who was turned to stone as Macha took away his difficult emotions, similarly to how the grandmother aims to take Ben and Saoirse to her home to remove the pressures on her son. The mixture of grounded reality and Celtic fantasy delivers a gorgeously detailed allegorical tale that resonates due to the importance of telling tales. The reason why fairy tales continue to be preserved is how these stories tell of fantastical events that reflect a moral and or emotional understanding of the world, imparting a message on its audience. Song of the Sea retains this traditional motivation for telling its story. Through the fantastical, the characters learn to accept that just because somebody has been lost does not mean that they are ever truly gone, and that the heartaches, the pains and sufferings that arise are essential. Human emotions that remind us of the significance of what has been lost and why it must be remembered. During the film's climactic sequence, when Ben and Saoirse have found their way back home, Saoirse sings the Selkie song which allows the fairies, the great Shanachie, Macha and Maclear safe passage into the afterlife, allowing them to no longer suffer, to be freed. Ben and Saoirse's mother, Bronna, returns in the form of a white seal, intending to collect Saoirse, her Selkie daughter, but agreeing to leave Saoirse with her father and older brother, acknowledging that once their worlds are entangled, the world of the folkloric and the world of reality, that Saoirse will no longer have her Selkie powers. This scene proves to be an emotional demonstration of closure. Bronna will soon leave, but she and her children Ben and Saoirse will never forget and will always love each other. It serves as a final farewell, the kind of closure that those mourning the loss of a loved one may wish to receive. One final chance to say goodbye. This ending, as equally upsetting and enchanting as it may be, strikes at the emotional centre of the film, creating a sentiment that will resonate with a broad audience. It's okay to miss somebody. It's okay to feel upset, to mourn, to struggle. Allow yourself that emotional pain as it demonstrates the strength of love held for that person who is no longer present. They might not be present physically, but in heart, in mind, they will always be there. In conclusion, Tomm Moore's Song of the Sea's mixture of traditional Irish folklore and grounded universal relatability creates a fantastical story that reflects the everyday characters with enchanting allegory, examining the struggles of coping with difficult emotions, but also the even more challenging prospect of what happens when those emotions are repressed. A dark cloud forming overhead, turning loved ones into stony shells of themselves. Charming, magical, and heart-churning, Song of the Sea is more than just its gorgeous attention to visual detail and lush landscapes, but presents the struggle and closure that comes with accepting challenging emotions of grief and loss. While innocent on the surface, Song of the Sea is an unpatronising fairy tale suitable and necessary for everyone. A special thank you to my super Patreon supporters Gil and Constantine Bombelli.